You're listening to the Nourished Child podcast, episode number 23, 12 Common Reasons Kids Won't Eat. I'm Jill Castle, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert and host of the Nourished Child podcast, a show and blog about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of raising healthy kids inside and out. Today we are talking about 12 common reasons kids won't eat. One of the most frustrating things for a parent is the child who won't eat. We hear a lot about overeating, but what's behind the child who just won't eat or won't eat enough? There are reasons children don't eat, and it's not always because they don't like the food that's offered. Today, I'll look at some of the most common reasons kids won't eat. You can find today's show notes with all the links I mentioned over at jillcastle.com/023. That's 023 for episode number 23.
Welcome to the Nourished Child podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Hey you, welcome back. If this is your first time here, thanks for tuning in and giving this show a listen. My first foray into experiencing a child who wouldn't eat was with my first daughter. When she was a young baby and toddler, I was still working at Children's Hospital in Boston and commuting back and forth from a town outside of Boston. So I had about a 45-minute commute each way. And my daughter was in a daycare situation, and her pickup time from daycare was 5 o'clock. I didn't get off work until 4 o'clock, and I had to take a little bus from the hospital to the parking lot where I parked my car, which, depending on traffic congestion, could take me 5 minutes to get to my car or 20 minutes. More often than not, I was stressed out when I arrived at daycare. I was always, it seemed, driving too fast or pushing the limits to get home before my daycare provider shut the doors. And if any of you have had the experience of being late to daycare to pick up your child, it's no fun. So I was always really worried about that and trying to avoid that at all costs. But by the time I would collect my daughter and bring her home, it was dinner time and it was fine. It was time to feed her. And so we would get her all set up, and in the high chair and get her dinner together. And there were many, many times that she would take 2 or 3 bites and say she was all done. And I was most definitely practicing Ellen Satter's division of responsibility and letting her lead the way in terms of letting me know when she wanted to eat and when she was done. Even though I did have her on a structured feeding schedule, when she would say she was all done, I would say, "Are you sure? Are you still hungry?" And we would have that sort of little back and forth, and she would say, "No, I'm done." So I would take her out of the high chair and we would move on. But that got to be really frustrating and stressful for me because I knew that she had not had anything to eat since 3 o'clock when she had her snack at the daycare provider's place. So I was sure she'd be hungry, but she didn't want to eat. So this went on for a little bit, and I finally figured out that she was picking up on my stress. So I was running into the daycare providers, scooping her up, getting the daily lowdown on how the day went for her, rushing home and immediately putting her right in the high chair and feeding her. And that just wasn't working. So I ended up changing things around. I packed her into a stroller after work with a light snack, and we both decompressed. And I'm not sure who that was more important for, me or her. But by the time we would return home, my husband had arrived, and it was time to make dinner for us. And that's when I started including my daughter at our family table and really just delaying her dinner time so she was eating with us. And I was much calmer. She was eating much better. And that's how we got through that situation. But it was a really stressful time to watch my child just basically refuse to eat much food at all night after night. I highlight this story to just help set the stage for what we're going to talk about today, and that's the reasons why children won't eat. And there's a lot of reasons. It doesn't necessarily mean your child doesn't like the food that you're offering. There can be very subtle things like your child's picking up on your stress and intensity at the meal table, and that's really shutting them down, or they're too tired. There's several reasons, and I will go through all of those and give you a little bit of background on them. But the point of this show is to help open up your mind to start thinking about the different reasons that might be underlying why your child won't eat. But before we get moving on, I want to remind you of my new book called Try New Food. It is out and available over on my website, www.jillcastle.com. I will include a link to that book in the show notes, or you can go straight to my website and click on the Books tab. I also have a free 6-step guide to setting up the perfect environment for food exploration in the show notes as well. So be sure to head over there and grab that resource. Share it with someone you know who might benefit from some guidance in this area. After this show, I will be featuring an interview with childhood hunger expert Clancy Harrison, and I am sure that will open your mind about what's at stake with hunger in America, especially for our kids. That will be airing in early February, so stay tuned, or better yet, subscribe to the podcast so you can get an automatic update on your phone when it airs. Again, the show notes will be available at jillcastle.com/023. That's 023 for episode number 23. Okay, let's get into the 12 common reasons kids won't eat. Reason number 1, and this is oftentimes what we see in the toddler years, and that reason is slowed growth. So around age 2 or 3, the toddler's growth slows down, and because of that slowing down, their appetite slows down also, or their appetite reduces. It's no coincidence that this is right around the time that picky eating begins. Now, toddlers definitely experience slowed growth, but so do school-age kids. They enter into a steady state of growth, and their appetite, as such, stays pretty steady as well. To give you some idea of what happens in infancy, we know that in the first year of life, body weight triples. So you have a 7-pound baby at birth, and by a year of age, that baby is around 20 pounds, 21 pounds. That's not the rate of weight gain and growth that occurs in toddlers and children. So the average weight gain is about 4.5 to 6.5 pounds per year and 2.5 to 3.5 inches per year. So you can see that it is not as exponential, but it is steady. So if you're worried your child isn't growing or gaining well, you can look at their growth chart and see if they're doing well. And what does that look like? It just looks like a consistent curve that is displayed in a manner of which your child is hanging on to their growth channel. So they might be growing at the 25th to 50th percentile. You will see over time that they will most likely stay within that percentile unless there's something going on. And one thing that could be going on is excessive weight gain or weight loss. And those are red flags and they warrant for further investigation and maybe even some intervention. At 5 to 6 years of age, interestingly, and I don't think a lot of people know about this, healthcare professionals do, but maybe not parents, body fat declines to its lowest point before it starts to go up again. What researchers and experts call this is adiposity rebound, and it is a normal phase of growth and development. It's a thinning out phase, and again, that happens around age 5 to 6, and it is to be expected. So sometimes parents get a little confused and worried about their child thinning out in the toddler years and then thinning out again around kindergarten, first grade. This is totally normal. And then after that, fat gain and weight gain and normal weight gain and growth ensues. Reason number 2, you have a fussy eater. And this can be for any child, but typically it's normal for toddlers to go through that picky eating phase. And I personally consider that sort of part of the normal development phase that nearly all children pass through. Of course, some children won't become picky. I have, out of my 4, not all of them went through the picky eating phase. And as you know, I've written about this on the blog quite a bit, but adults can make this a tougher phase by nagging their kids to eat or to try another bite, by bribing them with dessert or taking away privileges or food if they don't eat. So a fussy eater is pretty typically your child likes food one day, then he doesn't like it or he refuses it. They become very fickle with their eating. And they may even become erratic with how much food they eat, and those changing food preferences can drive you crazy, but it is very normal for the toddler age group. So keep that in mind. It may be just a phase that you don't want to fuel with your own behavior, but you want to just sort of ride it out and keep offering your healthy, balanced meals at timely intervals to ensure that your child has the opportunity to eat. But pushing too much or pressuring too much is a problem for children, for many children. And that leads me to reason number 3, and this again can be for any child. Too much pressure can be the reason why your child is not eating. Research shows that children who are pushed to taste food or take another bite may eat less well and less healthfully. Or they may do the opposite and eat really well beyond their appetite and perhaps even too much. For children who are in the picky eating phase, pressuring them may shut down their appetite, cause early fullness, which is a real physical change in these children. And we have the science that shows us that we actually, with too much pressure in some children, it can turn their appetite off. The other thing is that nagging kids to eat often gets the same result. Some kids, though, are pleasers and they are willing to follow the lead of their parents. And if their parents are insisting that they finish their food at mealtime, or they make sure they take 5 bites before they get up, those pleasing oriented children will do that. And that can override their own internal sense of food regulation and appetite regulation. And in the end, they're ending up eating more than they would normally eat if they listened to what's going on inside their own bodies. So again, too much pressure can have sort of this double effect. One is that your child is picky and sensitive to that pressure, and he may get full too early, shut down his appetite, and eat worse. And the other prong of this twofold impact is that your child is more pleasing in nature and goes ahead and eats more because you've asked him to than his body needs or would normally eat if he were in charge of his appetite. Reason number 4. Again, this can happen with any child, but some children with food allergies don't eat well, especially if they have multiple food allergies. And I'm actually going to write a blog post about multiple food allergies because there are some real risks that children who have more than one food allergy are facing when it comes to nutrition. But essentially, many food restrictions and diet limitations that can be associated with multiple food allergies can put children not only at risk for not getting enough nutrition and nutrients, but it can also make children bored with their diet. A little side note, about 30% of children who have food allergies have multiple food allergies. And again, that increases their risk for poor nutrition and low body weight and even food boredom. Reason number 5. So we're talking about the 12 common reasons kids won't eat. Reason number 5 is that your child might have super taste buds or might be called a super taster. So in these children, the taste of bitter is more present, and this can result in selective eating, especially of vegetables. In fact, 25% of all people, most of whom are female, are thought to be super tasters. So again, that super taster is going to have a heightened sensitivity and a heightened perception of bitter tasting foods. And which foods tend to be bitter? It's vegetables. So that may be why your child won't eat. Reason number 6, texture sensitivity. Some children may be sensitive and leery of certain textures, like mushy foods or wet or slippery foods, and as such, they may avoid them. Other children might be sensitive to the appearance or smell of food. So food sensitivities or sensitivities to these textures or appearances or characteristics of food can certainly limit the diet, leading to poor eating and nutrition. So often these kids get sort of bunched into the picky eating category, but parents may not realize that there can be more going on than just moving through a developmental stage. There is a new diagnosis out there called avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, also known as ARFID, and it is something that may include this texture sensitivity. Experts in food texture sensitivity believe that about 20% of kids who have challenges with eating in the first 8 years of life may also have these food texture sensitivities and may be diagnosed with ARFID or extreme picky eating. So all to say is that there can be more going on with picky eating. It might not just be your child's moving through a developmental stage. It could be that there is an underlying texture or food characteristic sensitivity that's going on that might be why they aren't eating. I oftentimes in my own practice feel that children who are around age 4, if they're not moving out of that picky eating phase, it's really important to start looking at some of the underlying reasons why they are still picky. And this could be one of them. Reason number 7, your child is on a food jag. So that hot dog loving preschooler is stuck on his few short list of favorite foods. This can appear like not eating, but most likely these kids are eating enough. They're just not getting enough variety and may not be getting enough nutrients. So a food jag is when a child wants to eat the same foods over and over, day after day. And again, this can be the reason why your child won't branch out and try other types of foods. In most cases, these kids are, again, moving through a temporary phase, which is, it can happen with any child, but most typically we see it in the toddler years. And again, how you interact with that child and whether you bring a variety of different foods to the table so the child is exposed and sees a lot of different foods, whether he eats them or not, can really help move the child out of a food jag. I think one of my daughters had a dress jag, and maybe you can relate, but we had a hand-me-down Polly Flinders pink dress that I'm pretty sure my daughter wore for 6 months straight, day after day. And I got to a point where, of course, I was washing it every day in the beginning, but towards the end, I was like, I'll wash this dress twice a week, and that's it. So she was on a dress jag. Kids can do the same thing with food. They just get stuck on the same foods, and we need to help them move along with other foods and create those positive situations where they can explore and have fun with food, and maybe as a result, they'll move away from just eating the same old foods and start bringing more variety into their diet. So again, we're talking about the common reasons kids won't eat. And reason number 8 is that your child is filling up on snacks. So when children fill up on snacks, they're obviously filling up their bellies. And this can lead to being too full or not hungry at mealtime. What is risky for the child who's filling up on snacks is that there won't be a good array of nutrients that the child is eating. They might be eating too many poor nutrient types of foods rather than snacks that contain a lot of good nutrition. So there are a few statistics I think that you might find interesting with this. 25% of toddlers don't eat fruits and veggies every day. So snacks, that's a perfect area for getting fruits and vegetables into young children and even older children. Because again, when you look at the recommendations, which are 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day, those fruits and vegetables need to be making an appearance quite regularly throughout the day. So snack time is a good time to offer fruits and vegetables. 90% of preschoolers consume 1 or more high-calorie snack foods or beverages each day. Again, that can crowd out room for nutritious foods. Remember, preschoolers and toddlers still have pretty tiny little tummies, and nutrition really matters. If your child is getting filled up with snacks and foods that might not be rich in nutrients, but they might be high in calories, that's crowding out room for more nutritious foods. Fruit juice consumption is double what is recommended, and for toddlers it's 4 to 6 ounces per day. So many toddlers are drinking much more than that. And again, it's the same premise that if you're filling up on these snacks or beverages that contain few nutrients, those little tummies can get filled up, but they're not getting the nutrients that they need. So they become not hungry for the meals that contain the healthy foods that you're wanting your child to eat. So be careful with how many snacks your child is eating in a day and the content of those snacks, what foods you're including in those snacks. And again, if you need ideas on snacks, I have plenty of those on my blog. There are plenty of snack ideas for kids and toddlers. There are also handouts on how many snacks a day should a toddler have versus a child versus a teenager. So you can find all of that over on my website, jillcastle.com/blog. That's where you'll be able to find those. Reason number 9, disordered eating. Disordered eating can be a reason why your child's not eating. Children and teens may be trying to cut back on eating to lose weight. They might be following their peers who are doing that. They might be experimenting with diets and dieting and skipping meals because that's what they're seeing in the media. Or they might be very dissatisfied with their body and feel that they want to change it, and so they're trying to control their food intake in order to do so. Disordered eating, like skipping meals, cutting out food groups, or dieting, may lead to an eating disorder. Girls and boys may try on different eating approaches: vegetarian, no bread, skipping breakfast. I feel like there's a learning curve for a lot of these kids, and they will experiment, particularly as they get into the teenage years. If these experiments or these trying on different ways to eat or different foods to eat or not eat, if these are temporary, I don't feel like parents or you need to freak out about it. I don't think there's cause to worry if they're temporary. But if they hang on, then you still want to make sure they're eating a well-balanced diet. And if their intentions are true and their weight is stable, I think you'll probably be okay. But you have to really be eyes wide open with kids these days and make sure that they're eating a healthier diet, for example, because they truly want to and they're going about it in a healthy way. Remember, disordered eating can be a path to an eating disorder like anorexia. So you do want to be aware and you want to be cautious, and you don't want to freak out and make a bigger deal out of something that might be just a small little, I'm going to be a vegetarian, which peters out over a couple of weeks, or versus I'm going to be a vegetarian because I want to cut down my calories so I lose weight. And then before you know it, we're not just cutting out meats, we're cutting out dairy, we're cutting out eggs, and we're not eating enough, period. That's a different scenario. So just keep your eyes and ears wide open. Another reason kids won't eat, and this is reason number 10, distractions. So children are easily distracted by TV or toys at the table, and this ultimately may have a negative impact on eating. I've seen a lot of toddlers lately who have all kinds of things at the table to entertain them, and it really does make it difficult for them to focus on eating, and it makes it difficult for parents to send the message that mealtime is a time to come together and interact with each other and focus on eating. So it's really best to let your child focus on food and eating at the table and turn off all those distractions, remove them, and reassure your child that he can get back to playing or TV time later. Reason number 11, your child is just plain old too tired to eat. So at the end of a long day, some kids are just too tired to eat. This may be true with the young athlete or the toddler or the child who has had a busy day of events at school. The good news is that most children are really good at making up the difference in their food consumption when one meal is less than stellar, meaning basically they will eat more at the next meal or snack. In terms of sleep and making sure your child is well rested, kids and teens in general need a minimum of 9 hours of sleep per day. And that's a recommendation from the National Sleep Foundation. And remember, when kids are sleeping, that's when they're growing. That's when growth hormone peaks and does its thing and lets your kid grow. So it really is important to make sure your child's well rested and to recognize if they're just got too much going on. And in today's world, kids are getting busier and busier than ever. And at the end of the day, they're exhausted. So helping your child regulate his sleep and eating patterns is very, very key to making sure they're well nourished and they're growing well. Reason number 12, and this is a long list of common reasons kids won't eat, and I probably haven't gone over all the other reasons. I'm sure maybe you're listening and thinking, oh, she didn't talk about this one or she didn't talk about that one. If I missed a reason, please write it in the comments of these show notes over at jillcastle.com/023. I would love to hear what you are thinking in terms of why kids don't eat. My last reason for why kids won't eat is illness. So when kids are sick, they tend to eat less well, mainly because they have a reduced appetite. This is generally not a worry as the appetite comes back when your child starts to feel better. But the bigger concern is preventing dehydration, and that is probably the most important aspect of a parent managing illness at home with a child, is making sure your child stays hydrated. I think it can take some kids up to a week to get back on track with eating. Again, make sure enough fluids are on board and bring more nutrition into those fluids if you can by using soups or smoothies or even juices to give your child a little bit more nutrition. So, there are many reasons why kids won't eat, from moving through a typical developmental stage to being too distracted to eat or too tired to eat, to more problematic reasons like a texture sensitivity or disordered eating. The point of this show is to, again, open up your eyes and your thinking about this, to dig in a little deeper and try to figure out why your child might not be eating as well as you'd like them to. Figuring out why will help you be strategic if you need to intervene, and it will certainly help you avoid unnecessary interventions and potentially even making the problem worse. If you find yourself struggling a bit with a child who won't eat, go grab my e-guide, Try New Food. At the very minimum, it will help you reassess your environment, your interaction with your child, and set up some positive steps for helping your child move forward and try new food. If you liked the show, help the Nourished Child podcast grow. Write a review on iTunes. Subscribe to the show on iTunes or on Android. It's also available on Stitcher Radio, Google Play Music, Tuned In, and more. Share the podcast on social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Instagram, wherever you hang out. It has been my pleasure to share this information with you today, but most of all, I hope it helps you better nourish your child inside and out. As always, be sure to grab the child in your life and give him a big squeeze today. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Nourished Child podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.